From Bloomberg's world headquarters in New York and from right here in London, I'm Caroline Hyde.
I'm Joe Weisenthal.
I'm Romaine Bostick. Let's take a look at where we stand in U.S. markets. The snow keeps on falling, but stocks keep on rising. The S&P posting its biggest rally in 10 weeks.
The question is, what'd you miss?
GameStop down 100. No, I'm joking. We're actually talking, well, a bit about retail traders finding the silver lining in all this recent frenzy. The price of silver surging at the so-called Reddit army turned its attention to the precious metal. Now, the volume of calls and puts, the options activity, today more than 4.5 times the previous year's average. The iShares Silver Trust ETF seeing unprecedented inflows of late. And, of course, it's an investment product that, rather ironically, benefits Ken Griffin's Citadel with its rally. Even small silver miners found themselves on the bright side of the retail-induced market buying. Joe, you called it several years ago, silver bugs. They're into conspiracy theories, and this has just been another kind of perfect storm for retail trade.
I'm not going to say anything next. I'm not going to say anything negative about silver bugs because I'm worried that our guest coming up might have an affinity for them, might be his customer. So I'm not going to say anything. But yes, silver is doing very well, and internet chatter seems to be part of it.
Yeah, and I'm real based to see how this all shakes out. Everyone keeps talking about the short squeeze, but I'm not sure there are all that many shorts here in this. I mean, you take a look at the CFTC positioning, and I mean, you can see how the net longs have been here, relatively highest level that we've seen in about a year. But more importantly, you look at the trend line. Even if you were to pull that chart back and go back even beyond 2017, this is not really a heavily shorted sector of the market, one way or the other.
All right, so joining us is APMEX CEO Ken Lewis. His firm is often called the Walmart of precious metals in North America. At times, was unable to process orders due to record demand. Extraordinary several days in the silver market. Talk to us about, what was the intensity of the volume you saw for silver coins? And to the best of your understanding, what catalyzed the demand for them?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously volumes have been significant. I mean, when we look at our numbers, we've done more volume on silver in the last 3 days than we did in all of December.
Wow.
Just to give you an order of magnitude of the kind of volume we're dealing with. And we're also seeing the type of investors a little different. We're seeing a lot more new people to the space. As an example, 43% of my orders today are new customers to APMEX. Normally that runs about 14 to 20%. So we're seeing a lot of new people coming into the market. You ask why? I mean, clearly, I do believe the Reddit strings and the silver squeeze popularity out there on Twitter is driving an interest in this. I think some people believe that they can take physical off the market and drive the price up. And they're doing a good job of it based on the amount of demand we're seeing over the last few days.
A good job of it, but longer term, can they take supply off the market and drive it higher? Because this is a much more expansive, liquid, deep market than GameStop is, for example.
I would agree with you 100%. I think when you look at the banks and their positions on silver, it's going to be a little bit longer or a longer play, I should say, than maybe what they can do in some of the stocks out there in the market today. I've read a few things in terms of, you talked about shorts and just the amount of metal that's in the market. We have to remember the big play here is they're trying to make physical metal have to be delivered to the exchanges, and is physical metal available to do that? And I think there's questions out there when you start to evaluate the supply and demand, and frankly, where the metal's sitting today and in what form it's sitting.
I wonder about the regulatory aspects of people trying to corner this market. I mean, we've seen these attempts before from much larger players, and in a couple of those instances, it really wasn't market forces necessarily that brought them down, but it was the regulators or something akin to that sort of stepping in and kind of pulling the plug. Is there a risk here in this day and age of that happening?
I mean, look, again, it's not my expertise probably to speak to in great detail, but silver's been a great investment for several years now. Just look at its returns, look at its performance. We analyzed even just as an asset class over the last 20 years. It's done very, very well. So it's been more volatile in the last 6 months than I've ever seen silver really be. And I think that's a little bit of the type of investors getting in and out of silver. But in terms of the downside risk, I don't think it has near the downside risk that you might see in other investments out there.
Ken, talk to us a little bit more about the silver supply chain. Okay, so you get slammed with orders, more in just a few days, the last 3 days that you saw for all of December. What does that cause you as a retailer of coins to have to do to go out to your wholesaler? And what's happening when you go out to the wholesaler, what they tell you about their availability for you?
No doubt. I mean, first and foremost, we have a very strong balance sheet. We normally keep about 150 to 180 million in inventory on the books, which is fairly significant. When you look at the volume we did, it was about a third to about half of the silver we had either on hand or on order at the time, because we had taken a strategic position, thinking, frankly, silver could become a little bit more popular than it has been in the past. With that said, though, we've been actively working the markets for silver. We've been doing it since Friday of last week. And what we're finding is retail-ready product that a normal retailer would sell on their site is not as readily available as, say, 1,000-ounce silver bar or grain or other forms of silver, form factors of silver. So it's going to be a tough go for us to secure the kind of demand that's out there for retail right now. I estimate, if demand stayed at levels it is today, we have a good 4 or 5 days, and we'll probably have a very difficult time selling silver on our website for at least a few weeks because of the demand being so high.
Wow.
So, Ken, it sort of is a supply shortage in the short term, even though it isn't in the long term. It's sort of a liquidity squeeze almost in what's happening in terms of the silver market. How sticky do you think these new 40% new clients that you've just got today will be?
Great question. It's something we look forward to evaluating. I can tell you the average order size is actually healthy. It's not down. Normally you would see when you bring new buyers into a retail environment, they tend to spend a little bit lower, especially silver buyers, a little bit lower than your average order size. We're not seeing that. We are seeing the products they're buying. They're buying the mainstream products. They're not buying anything that's really an outlier. Our top products are your traditional Silver Eagle product from the U.S. Mint, or form factors, bars, and coins and rounds. So they're not getting too far out there in terms of what they're buying. They seem to be fairly educated in terms of what products to procure. So we really don't know. There is another side of the equation I'd like to highlight, and that is for those who've been in metal a long time, we are seeing a lot of people looking at getting out of metal. So you're seeing both sides of the equation also playing, where you do have some retail buyback business that's also been very strong with these new highs.
I'm curious, Ken, have you seen any sort of spillover into some of the other precious metals?
Yeah, I mean, we had to unfortunately stop the sale of silver over the weekend. I'm sure we can talk about why we had to do that here in a moment. But when we looked at our gold business, it's been very, very healthy. Gold is, just read the analyst reports out there. There's a lot of favorite views on that. And gold's been very strong. Platinum has also moved very well the last few weeks and has also been strong as well. But really gold's our mainstream product. We generally sell gold at a higher rate than silver, but that's changed obviously over the last few days.
So you mentioned that sort of like large bars of silver, the likes of which a retail buyer probably isn't going to buy. That's not where the shortage is. So is the issue really more production capacity, the sort of the I don't know what they're called, plants, factories that turn the bars into coins and collectibles? And how much of a squeeze is it really specifically there versus overall supply and demand for the metal itself?
Well, we hit the markets really hard today trying to source metal, and we feed metal into manufacturers, right? So we have our brand put on different silver bars and rounds, and we found that when we went to the market to find grain and 1,000-ounce bars, we were fairly successful in finding that. When you talk about capacity, you use something like the U.S. Mint. They've been on allocation for almost a year now, where they can't keep up with demand. They only have so much minting capacity. They can only get so many blanks from their suppliers. And that's really driven the price, the premiums up, and frankly made product a little bit tougher to get if you're a retail consumer. So I do think the bottleneck is primarily around minting and refining. It's not so much around being able to produce 1,000-ounce bars, at least at this stage. Now, back in March of last year, we had a run where the COMEX and the London exchanges kind of got out of sync. And you saw a massive amount of silver get delivered to the exchanges last year. I don't know that we're going to see that again, but if those times start to see itself where people are getting into the ETFs and they're pushing more delivery of metal to the COMEX, you could see 1,000-ounce bars start to drop as well.
All right, Ken, I really appreciate you taking time to be with us. Great insights here. That's Ken Lewis. He's the CEO of APMEX, of course, one of the biggest dealers out there of silver and precious metals. Now, we're going to continue this conversation here